We're just waiting to the live stream to come up, that's all. Morning, councilors, staff. I'd like to call Planning Advisory Committee to order. I want to welcome our two public members, Pam and Sam, for joining us. As you can see, councilors, we have a full day in planning, so we hope to keep it going smoothly. First off, I'd like to begin by our land acknowledgement. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki and the district of Spaganagity, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. East Stands further acknowledges the 50 African Nova Scotia communities whose 400-year history have contributed to the province's culture, history, and legacy. We are all treaty people. First item on the agenda is approval or amendments to the agenda of all subcommittees. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried. Approval of the minutes of March 18th, 2025. All those in favor? Contrary? Minutes are approved. First item on the agenda is Plan 23-011, Nova Scotia Limited Cottage Country application update. And Debbie, you can begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So planning staff received an application from the numbered company, Cottage Country, in January 2024. A public information meeting was held in April of 2024. An updated application has now been submitted by Brighter Community Planning and Consulting on behalf of the applicant. The original application was for mapping amendments and development agreement to permit 550 bare land condo units and 24.6 hectares of multi-use development on 418 hectares of land. So that application has now been updated, and the updated application is for the development agreement to permit 370 bare land condo units and 9 hectares of multi-use development on 323 hectares of land. The application no longer proposes the redesignation and rezoning of land. So the properties outlined in red are the ones under application. As you can see, they're already zoned Rural Comprehensive Development District. The lands along East Uniacke Road are zoned rural use, and then there's some open space land owned by the municipality. In addition, we have land here where Villages 1 and Villages 2 are located, and that's from an existing development agreement that was completed or applied for in 2010. Council approved an application to permit the development of 401 bare land condominium units on Long Lake. To date, 158 of the 401 permitted dwelling units have been constructed or under construction. So there's 100 in Village 2 here, and the rest of them, 301, are in Village 1. And just for context, Nature Drive, we own Nature Drive, and East Uniacke Road, the province owns Long Lake. And we own a little bit of Village Drive, and then the remainder of the lands are in private ownership. This is a satellite image showing the subject properties. Again, we have Village 1, Village 2, the open space lands, East Uniacke Road, Nature Drive, Long Lake Road, and some cottage development around Moore Lake. The purpose of the application is to enter into a development agreement to permit 370 dwelling unit bare land condominium development with 9 hectares of multi-use development, and that's commercial and residential live-work units. The concept plan shows the 370 dwelling units and the multi-use lands divided into 5 different condo villages. All condo units will be an average size of 0.4 hectares, about 1 acre, to accommodate on-site services. Currently, the proposal shows 2 open space parcels that could be used as part of the open space contribution. However, other options to improve the existing parks are being considered. Other parks and trails within the condo developments will be owned and maintained by the future condo corporations. Private roads within the condo corporation are proposed to be constructed to municipal standards for private roads. Staff have requested that the current emergency exit to Long Lake Road be upgraded to a municipal road to allow for a second public road to service the dwelling unit owners and commercial operators. Together with the existing cottage country development, there are proposed to be 771 Bearland condominium units as part of the development for an approximate future population of 1,850 residents. So this here's the concept plan. So as we said, just for some context, there's East Uniacke Road here, Nature Drive that goes in. We have Village Drive, and this is Village 1, part of the current development agreement, and this is Village 2, part of the current development agreement. And these two land parcels are the open space parcels owned by the municipality. There's a mixed-use spot proposed up here closer to the intersection with East Uniacke Road, and then another mixed-use area around the intersection with the current emergency access. And as I said, the municipality's requested that this emergency access be upgraded to a public road that goes out to Long Lake Road, which is a public road as well. And the reason for that is that we're not allowed to consider, or council has passed a motion that not to bring a development agreement forward that doesn't have the emergency access points for anything over 100 dwelling units. So that would service this area here. You'd have two access points out to the East Uniacke Road. In addition, this Phase 5 and Phase 4, you can see the multiple connections back down to the emergency exit there. And again, there's 5 different phases, which is approximately 5 different condo corporations. And you can see some of the park area here. The darker green ones, these would be ones related to the actual condo corporation, whereas I believe the lighter ones here are more related to what the municipality could consider taking over. We're still working on negotiations with that part. Policy analysis. So in addition to the implementing policies R13 of the MPS allows council to consider entering into a development agreement for a residential Bearland condominium development. In considering the policy goal, council should consider that the best interests of the municipality and the community are protected, and to ensure the proposed development within the comprehensive development district areas is appropriate in terms of its timing, content, appearances, and design. The application is appealable to the Nova Scotia Utility Review Board due to the lands being pre-zoned World Comprehensive Development District, and the applicant engaged Griffin Transportation Group Incorporated to prepare a traffic impact study. The study has been submitted to both Nova Scotia Public Works and our municipal engineers for review, and both organizations have provided feedback to the applicant. A level 1 hydrogeological assessment was completed for the original application, the larger one. Staff are still in the process of reviewing that assessment. Citizen engagement. So a public information meeting for the original application was held on April 2nd of 2024, so last year. Approximately 180 people attended the meeting, but this number also included people attending for a second application. Notes from the meeting have been attached to the staff report. Staff have also received emails from individuals wishing to comment on the application. These emails have been provided to PAC members for the consideration. Considering that the application has been updated and the time that has elapsed since the first public information meeting, staff are recommending that a second public information meeting be held in the community of Mount Uniacke. Unless otherwise directed, staff will continue to use the same mail-out area as previously identified by PAC. This mail-out included all properties within 300 meters of the subject lands and properties with frontage on East Uniacke Road. And the recommendation is that Planning Advisory Committee recommends that council authorize staff to schedule a public information meeting in the community of Mount Uniacke, and below is the recommended motion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Debbie, for that. Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Debbie, can you scroll back to the plan, like the... Yeah. So what's the state of the emergency exit now?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the emergency exit is simply in accordance with the current development agreement. It's just access that people can use in case of an emergency. It's not, I don't know if it was had to be built to a certain standard or not, but it had to be maintained and kept free of large potholes and stuff like that, so it had to be usable.
So it doesn't have to be up to any standard?
I don't recall. The current emergency access, was there a road standard that it had to follow?
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, I think what the DA said, the current DA, is that it has to be usable year-round, it has to be maintained, and I can't remember if we specified usable by emergency vehicles, but something like that, basically that. So there's not a specific grade or width or anything like that specified, it's just, it has to be usable.
Usable. And I think
So-
it said it has to be free of potholes and other obstructions and stuff like that.
So with this application, they have to upgrade it to a public road or private road?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we've asked that it be upgraded to a public road to allow for that access connection to Long Lake Road, which is also a public road there.
Oh, so the second exit is connected not to East Uniacke, to the Long Lake?
So yeah, through this process, we've requested that it go out to,
Okay,
Long
yeah,
Lake.
yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Warden Rolston.
Thank you. Just to clarify for myself, this diagram in green, this is what's covered by this current application, or does this include what they've previously?
through you, Mr. Chair, this is just by the current application. The stuff that was done previously is kind of faded out there, and you can see the roads. That's under the existing development agreement. So this is just for the proposed development agreement on the RCDD lands.
So, and possibly you can't answer this, I'm just a little curious, because they've only developed around 39% of what they were approved in 2010, 15 years ago. So I'm just a little curious as to why they want a development agreement to develop almost 400 more units when they still have like, I think it's somewhere around 200 and some, a significant amount that they haven't developed in the other one yet. So just makes me curious. Have they provided any reason as to why they haven't built out their previous development agreement yet before coming into?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the applicant has indicated that they are under development pressure and that they do have interest for new development to come online. That's the information that I was provided.
But they still have hundreds that they haven't developed. And anyway, that's all for now. I'm just curious. And with these new developments, these are nice developments, absolutely. And I just like to make sure in any development agreement that any roads, assuming it's approved, that any roads that are built up to a public standard and not just driveways around a condo corporation. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Counselor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff. I do believe in this application, they have a variety type of dwellings, is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, on the original application, they had initially discussed that, but they've changed it so these would all be single-unit dwellings.
And they're all roughly 1 acre,
Approximately, yes.
approximately 1 acre in size. So it follows basically what we would have for any other standard subdivision.
Our minimum size requirements are approximately 1 acre as well for a country residential zone, yes.
Okay. I'm just making sure that, this is conforming to what would normally be in the area as well, even if it wasn't a condo corporation. With the talk about the access roads, is there any way that we could ask that emergency services be consulted as to the level of passability of these roads? Because they are emergency access roads, and I would really like to, the last time I talked to our fire department, they weren't really sure how well and passable they are with the current equipment that they have. So I would like to see something in there that these roads have to be looked at by the emergency staff every so often to ensure they're being kept up to that standard for just public safety.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we've asked that the one that connects Nature Drive over to Long Lake Road, that'd be a public road standard.
Yeah, but that is not a feasible connection for emergency services because you have to go all the way
Yeah.
to Long Lake. The one off East Uniacke is the one that emergency services would probably try and enter first because you can get to the heart of the development if you can't get to it off of Nature Drive.
And then the sub-roads here, we've indicated that they should be built to municipal standards for private roads, so they'd be same as another private road development that we have in the municipality.
No, I just think it would be, possibly good to talk to the applicant about coordinating with the local emergency services just to ensure that those are passable. Not only for the safety of the people, but it also would be a great thing that he could confirm for anybody who wants to go into his development in the future.
And just for clarification, through our consultation process, we also send out letters to our reviewing agencies, and one of them is our Mount Uniacke Fire Department in this case.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and this one here,
And
I would say you need to also consult the Rawdon Fire Department because they would be the first ones to come for mutual aid off of the Beaverbank Road into East Uniacke, and just where the location of this currently is. If in the future the Uniacke substation gets built, it'll be a lot easier. But from the distance from Mount Uniacke Fire Department and the Rawdon one, they're pretty close. So I would like to have both the departments weigh in just to be able to for mutual aid purposes alone, and awareness, if that's possible.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Dixon?
Thank you. So the chair to staff, I guess the first comment I was going to have was with the fire emergency. I think Council Perry covered that. Second question, on the April 2nd meeting, there was an enormous amount of questions. Will most or all of those questions be addressed at the next hearing, if possible?
Through Mr. Chair, some of those questions were addressed that evening. For example, the ones that were questioning an environmental study. We don't do environmental studies as such, but the developer has provided like the hydrogeological study and wetland delineation boundaries and stuff like that. So we should have some of that information available to them.
Because there was a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Musa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Debbie, can you talk a little bit about the open space? Like, this seems too small to me, so are those the set in stone that, like, if the development is approved, those area will be the open space one? That's a light green one?
Through Mr. Chair. So yes, so it's not set in stone. We're still in the negotiation process in regards to open space contributions. And remember, it can be land, work in cash in lieu, or it can be work in kind. And as I mentioned, that the developer has discussed the option of doing some work in one of the existing parks to provide some more amenities on the municipally owned lands. So right now, we're still in the negotiations of what that could look like.
Yeah, and when I enlarge the picture, I see a lot of water in those areas. So are we making sure that they're not our wetland or?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, our Parks Department is very aware that we don't take on wetland for open space anymore, and to ensure that.
I just want to make sure that
Yeah.
we get good land, usable land for. And what do you mean? But those open space will be owned by the corporation, by the.
So the two that are right now, as the concept plan shows, the two I think that would go to the municipality would be this one here and then this one here. But as I said, there's a possibility that instead of maybe getting one or both of these parcels, that maybe there'll be upgrades to the existing parks to provide some more amenity space. But the parks that are inside here where the wetlands are located more often would be owned by those condo corporations. And those condo corporations would be in control of maintaining those, and there would be walkways around or in around them that those condo corporations would then maintain.
And there's a couple small one at the bottom of the picture. Are those owned by the municipality?
These ones here?
The smaller one, yeah, the light green one at the bottom of the picture. Down on. the lake.
No, this one here would be, I believe, by the condo corporation. It was just here, and I believe right here that they were looking at for the municipal open space lands.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Counselor. Warden Rolston?
Yeah, I just kind of tweaked my interest. I would agree with Counselor Musa that those are very small-looking plots of land compared to the size of the development to offer for open space. But anyway, I'll leave that for staff to negotiate the best deal for us. I guess my question is, as I said before, we have a 2010 development agreement that's only 39.4 or something percent built out 15 years later. Is there any way we can put something in a future development agreement that would tie the developer to some type of timeline to develop it out? I just don't want us to be caught in a situation in, I won't be here, but 20 years down the road and regulations have changed, we've learned a lot more, climate change, but yet, 30% of this has been developed and he still has the right to do exactly what he has to do today in spite of changing conditions.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, you can put timelines in your development agreement. For example, you can put the timeline for when the development agreement is signed. We usually put 1 year in for that. Then you have a timeline for starting construction, and then you have a timeline for when construction should be complete. And sometimes we put may within that, may be terminated, the development agreement may be terminated, and other times it says shall be terminated. So it's up to council if they want to provide a timeline, then we can put that in there and indicate that they have a certain number of years to either start the development, complete the development, or get halfway through the development. It's
I don't want to
really
be
up to you.
unreasonable with a developer, but at the same time, the weather events that we've had since the previous development agreement was signed there in some areas of the municipality have certainly changed the water on the beans of a lot of things. And so I just, that's my only concern, that, we don't give it an open-ended development agreement that in 20, 30, 40 years down the road, this developer is still tied to regulations that were in place today by what he has to do, as opposed to what might be in place had we been doing it at that time. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Councilor Marion?
Thank you. Through the chair to Debbie. Good morning. Question for you about the report mentioned for Condo Corp 12 and Condo Corp 6.
Yes.
It made a point of mentioning that 12 has an elected board and that 6 doesn't have an elected board. Am I correct there?
Yes, so condo corporations, they need to have 50% ownership in order to form, and then over 50%, no, sorry, I can't remember how it goes. So I think it's like 50% ownership by different people in order to have like a elected board. So the Village 2, that does have that ownership split, so that's pretty much almost built out, and it's run by the board, whereas Village 1 doesn't have that split, so there's 301 that could be constructed there. But there's not enough to meet that bar where they have an elected board. And now my law understanding of condo corporations isn't as great as maybe some of the planning background, but that's from my understanding, that they need to have that 50% ownership before it can be an elected board.
Thank you. And I guess my follow-up question was just where it was pointed out in the report, the composition of those condo corps, in relation to what's in front of us. Is it at all problematic having an entity, so Condo Corp 6, the fact that it does not have currently an elected board, is that at all problematic?
I don't believe so. The reason we put it in there is just to let council know how they're formed. Also, when it comes to making changes to their existing development agreements, a condo board has the ability to apply for an amendment to a development agreement. However, the individual owners can't apply for an amendment to the development agreement because the condo corporation is in ownership. So when you have a condo board, everything has to be through the condo corporation and through the elected board, whereas the other one is condo corporation, still condo corporation. The board is run by the majority owner right now, who is Cottage Country, so they can make applications to amend that development agreement without needing the consensus of the elected board, because there's
Okay.
no elected boards. It's just trying to explain how the condo corporations work. But it has no bearing on this application. It was just for background information.
Okay, thank you very much, thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Perry.
Thank you. Well, this is just sent into a public information meeting, and I was at the last one, and there was a lot of questions, and a lot of the people were confused between the two presentations of what was going on. So a lot of the questions that were being asked weren't always related to the topic that was on hand at that one. There was some pretty big confusion between the two that were up for talk that night. So I'm going to move to authorize the Planning Advisory Committee recommends authorize staff to schedule a public information meeting to consider the application from 3230225 Nova Scotia Limited Cottage Country to consider entering into a development agreement for lands identified as PID 45155314, PID 454031114, PID 45392602, PID 451555306 to permit 370 dwelling bare land condominium development on 323 hectares of land with multi-use development, commercial and residential. I so move.
Okay, it's moved in second. Thank you, Counselor. On before the motion, Counselor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not speaking to the motion, but speaking to something that Warden Rolston mentioned. So in our development agreements, there is no, as of now, there is no restriction, no time restriction on them.
Human share, right now, we do have restrictions within our development agreements. It's just that they're all different, other than that first timeline where we have 1 year to actually enter in to sign that development agreement. That's standard for all of them. But after that, it really depends on the development. For example, the comprehensive development districts that we have in Lance, I think they have like 5 years to start an application, and then they have maybe 25 years to finish their development. So the existing Cottage Country Development Agreement, they actually already went through the process of amending their timelines, because they did have timelines in that original development agreement. Council approving an extension to that timeline, so they've already gone through that process to extend that timeline. But usually what we do is part of the development agreements, we look at how long it's going to take for somebody to build out, and we work with the developer and go from there. to put
So
in
then
timelines.
the restrictions or what's put on them are done, they're unique to each development agreement?
That's correct, other than that first standard clause, yeah.
Okay, so what I'm thinking of, because this is something that's, so say the building by, I think BD Stevens, which has yet to be built next to the Magnolia.
Yes.
So that was a couple years ago, that was 14 years and still going. So now it would be about 16 years since they got the initial development agreement. At that time, we had no restrictions put in place, or?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I imagine there probably are restrictions. I don't know off the top of my head that there would be, but it's a standard clause that we put in pretty much all development agreements, that there are some restrictions on the timelines. It again comes down to the wording of the development agreement, if it says shall or if it says may, and I can't tell you from that development agreement what that says.
So then I'm just wondering what guidelines you use. Another example is across from the RCMP station where those apartment buildings were built on a zone change that I think is from the 90s maybe. John might be able to answer that. And then since then, apartment buildings were not approved across the street from it. So, things have kind of changed. So that was even longer ago. I'm just wondering how you decide with the development agreement what restrictions you're going to put on any given development agreement.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just for clarification, those apartment buildings across from the RCMP, those weren't under a development agreement. That land was zoned R3, which allowed for multi-unit development. They went through a site plan approval process, and site plan approval prior to 2023, there was no time limits on site plan approval. And in 2023, when you did some adoptions to your regulations, I think we have a 2-year time limit on it now. That's correct, okay. A 2-year time limit now on site plan. So anything going forward since 2023, you have 2 years for that developer to build out. Building permits and stuff like that, again, they have 2 years that they can build, and then they have another year in which they can apply for an extension of that building permit before they have to reapply for the entire building permit again. And subdivision plans, I'm not quite sure how long it has. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Director, go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to add that with respect to, the case-by-case thing, it really depends on the nature of a development. So again, if it's a multi-phase, 1,000-unit development, we're going to obviously talk to the developer what their expected time horizon is. And in a case like that, it's going to be a decade or more. In the case of a single apartment building, 2 to 5 years might be a more reasonable time frame. So it really does depend. And the care home you talked about, I think that DA had a shall or a may in it, not a shall. So that's why that DA was still in effect, and they could have sought a permit at any time. In the end, they decided to reapply because their plans had changed.
Thank you, John. Follow-up, Counselor?
No, that's it for me, thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you. Counselor Musa?
Thank you. I promised that the last time. So I don't know who is this for, Wade or Debbie. So when you have a condo corporation and you subdivide lot and you put them for sale, like as he have like hundreds of lots on the market, does he have to pay taxes on those lots as any other subdivision, or they have special treatment like that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, they're not subdivided. So those properties, when you're looking at them, sorry, I keep getting, where all these homes are here in Village 2, those aren't subdivided lots. That's one large lot, and the units are created. And those people have exclusive use of those units, and they're taxed on those units.
Okay.
And then from what I understand after talking to PVSC is that the common land that's in common ownership is kind of taxed under the common ownership or split amongst them. I can't remember exactly what their comments were, but I can get those for you again.
No, but if I'm a landowner and I want to do subdivision, as soon as I subdivide my lots, they're taxable. They become taxable, right?
Yeah. So through you, Mr. Chair, they're not subdivided. They're not subdivided. New PIDs are created, and those PIDs are taxed, but it's not subdivided.
So that's what I mean. Like now, if you go on Viewpoint and you see they have hundreds of lots listed.
Yeah.
So are those lots being taxed, or they only when somebody buy them they getting taxed?
Again, they're not lots, they're units. And I'm not quite sure if how they're being taxed at the time that the units are created, but I know that when the homes are on there, that they're being taxed for having those homes on there. I don't know, Wade, if you can. Yeah,
Yeah, but if you go on Viewpoint, you see every lot where it is, like
yeah, again,
lot
it's not,
1,
it's,
lot 2, lot 3, lot 10, lot
it's not a
100.
lot, it's a unit. They're units, yeah.
So if in any regular subdivision, as soon those lots being created, they're taxable.
Yeah.
So these are not taxable. They only pay tax on the whole land. So they could sit on them for 20 years and not paying any taxes.
You're still paying taxes on the unit. The common land, I think I don't know if it's split, but they're like the condo corporation I don't believe they have a tax bill themselves. Kim, you might be able to.
No, but the owner now, like
Yeah.
the unit that he created 100 unit and
Those would
they're
be-
still not developed.
They're
So
still not
are those
developed.
units being taxed at the unit or at the whole land?
I believe so, yes.
The
They're
whole land?
being taxed as a unit, I believe.
CAO wish to comment? Go ahead.
I think what your question is if you have bulk land, it's assessed at, say, $12,000 an acre. As soon as you create a lot, it gets assessed at $40,000 or $60,000 an acre. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, like
Yeah.
you see, you go on Viewpoint and you see each unit is assessed for like 40,000.
Yeah.
So are they paying taxes on the 40,000 or on the land before it being subdivided?
Yeah, we'll have to find out the
Well,
question
that's
to
very
that.
important to me
Yeah.
to know because that gives them more advantage over somebody who's gonna subdivide 100 lots and he have to pay on the 100 lots.
Yeah, I think the way other condos that I've looked at from a tax perspective, I think it's one PID and multiple AAN numbers. And those AAN numbers get taxed, but they wouldn't create an AAN number until that the unit is created or the lot is created.
They put in phased development plans, and Kelly, our development officers have to sign off on these plans, condo plans. And once those condo plans are done, each unit has a different PID, like you can search a PID for a unit.
Yeah.
An AAN.
I think it has a PID too, doesn't it? Yeah, they all have PIDs. Yeah, and they have an AAN. And so I believe that they are taxed at the time of the creation.
We can find out.
Yeah, I'll confirm for sure.
Okay, so that's very important to find out because I don't want any developer to get advantage over the other, like in the whole municipality, not
Yeah.
just. And for the warden question about why he's rushing it, I think there's a lot of demand over there. If you look on Viewpoint, there's like over 40 lots under contract, under like pending. So people are buying and like contractor are buying like 10 at a time. So probably he's looking to get ahead of the game. So that's, I don't know if that will cover the warden question. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Warden Rolston?
Yeah, I'd just say, I think Counselor Musa raises a valid point. I just flipped on to Viewpoint here. And definitely, if I were just someone wanting to buy a piece of land to put a home on, I think I could buy the land because it does say vacant land and then gives a civic, but they're not actually buying the land, they're buying the right to build a house on the land. So it is kind of confusing. I'll be interested to hear what we find. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Nobody left to speak, so we'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously. Thank you, Debbie, for your report. Next item on our agenda is Plan 24-003, Talib Web application, first reading. Leanne, you can begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the subject properties for the application are located on Highway 2 in Lance, outlined in red. The zoning is 2-unit residential R2 with some moderate risk floodplain at the rear of the properties in the hatched color. And they are designated the established residential neighborhood designation as per the generalized future land use map. And the properties are located within the South Corridor and Commercial Growth Management Area. So the applicant is requesting to change the zone from the two dwelling unit residential R2 zone to the multiple unit residential R3 zone, and from the established residential neighborhood designation to the medium density residential designation, in order for the applicant to build 2 large multiplex dwellings. And currently, the properties are vacant. So again, the applicant has indicated their intentions to construct 2 24-unit residential buildings. The land use bylaw requires a minimum of 30 meters road frontage and a minimum lot area of 3,000 square meters for large multiplex developments. So right now, the two properties don't meet the required frontage in order to enable a large multiplex. So Lot 2 has 28.95 meters of frontage and is 2,328 square meters in area. And Lot 3 has 28.95 meters of frontage and is just over 2,700 square meters in area. So the applicant is currently in the process of purchasing land from the adjacent property owner in order to meet those lot frontage and area requirements for large multiplexes. So this was their proposed concept plan that was provided, showing both building footprints with underground parking. And if the application is approved, the applicant doesn't have to develop the site as shown on the concept plan. It's just one example of how the site could be developed. So the applicant would still have to develop the property in accordance with the regulations in the land use bylaw, including setbacks, building height, et cetera. And the land could also be sold and someone else could develop it in a different manner. So for policy analysis, staff have been referring to the municipal planning strategy policies for the MR designation, as well as the general policies for amending the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw. Policy IM 11 states council shall only consider private applications to amend the strategy where the amendments are in the best interest of the municipality. And IM 13 enables an application for map amendments to the MPS when a request for a rezoning amendment that is not consistent with the strategy's maps, but is consistent with the intent of the strategy. And then staff also been referring to IM 14 through to IM 26, which is the evaluation criteria for amending our maps. So a recent study was completed by the province of Nova Scotia in collaboration with Dillon Consulting Limited, which did a comprehensive analysis of the Minas Basin region primary watersheds. And that information was recently provided to the municipality with new floodplain mapping. So the current floodplain mapping for these properties shows some moderate risk floodplain at the rear of the property. And with the new floodplain mapping, as shown here, so the purple color represents the 1 in 20 flood event, and the pink is the 1 in 100 year flood event. So our flood scenario shows pretty much all of the property would fall within the 1 in 100 flood scenario, which is the equivalent to our moderate risk floodplain overlay zone, and a significant portion within the 1 in 20, which is our equivalent to our high-risk floodplain zone. So planning staff will be reviewing this new information as part of the 2026 plan review and comparing this new data with the existing floodplain study that was done in 2013 by CBCL. For citizen engagement, there was an advertisement indicating that the amendments were under review. And there was a public information meeting held, so that was held in February 2025. And there were 3 different applications that were discussed at that meeting. And there were 32 members of the public in attendance. So some of the concerns and comments that were brought forward were regarding the area infrastructure and whether the availability of soft services, so schools and libraries in the area would be able to support the development. Concerns regarding flooding and water runoff. So these properties in this area was heavily flooded in the 2023 July rainstorm. Some discussion about the number of units and what's permitted as of right. Currently, there was a comment about a request for a hydrological study and just some questions on next steps and how the public can stay involved. So staff are continuing to review the application, and this application is not appealable to the Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board. So lastly, just after new floodplain mapping was received and reviewed by staff in relation to the application, staff are recommending that the application not proceed any further. as the properties are located within both a high-risk and moderate-risk floodplains, which poses a safety concern to development and human safety. And if PAC does support the application, they can choose to recommend that council move forward with the application, and planning staff will complete the full review of the policies and provide comments from reviewing agencies. But the recommendation is that Planning Advisory Committee recommend that council refuse the application. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Leanne. Councilor Rhino?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of things there. You went back and said that they, at the first of it, they don't have the proper setbacks for, I think they're close, but they're not at the proper setbacks, correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. Yeah.
All right. So, and it also stated that they're in the process of trying to attain more land. Why would we even consider this until they had the more land? Had it in their name? That confuses me, why we're doing this. And I agree with the recommended motion, like, why would we allow this, something to be built on a floodplain that flooded in 2023 badly, and everybody was up in arms, and rightly so. Why would we allow that? So I agree with the recommended motion to refuse this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Warden Rolston?
Similar to Councilor Rhino, I'm going to cut right to the chase, and I'm going to move that Planning Advisory Committee recommends that council refuse the proposal to change the designation and zone of PID 45089-356, PID 45089-349, and a portion of PID 45089-455 from established residential neighborhood designation ER to medium-density residential neighborhood MR designation, and rezone from 2-unit dwelling residential R2 to multiple-unit residential R3.
Moved in second. Thank you, Warden. Councilor Musa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Leanne, when did the floodplain study came out? Before the application or after?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can't remember the exact date of the study, but it was after the application came in.
After the application, yeah. Because the only thing I asked, because if we knew before, that application probably wouldn't be here if we share it with the developer, because he's gonna know he have no chance of it. Thank you. So that makes sense. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Perry?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to staff, is there any way to mitigate the flood zone thing, the floodplaining? So I'm just wondering, B digs a massive pond that carries overflow, or is there any options for people who live in a floodplain to mitigate the floodplain zoning on their properties to make it, reclaim some of the land out of that moderate risk? High risk, you're never gonna, I don't think you'll ever get out of the high risk, but the moderate risk, is there a way to lower that and increase your land?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have regulations in the land use bylaw for the moderate risk floodplain, and so that for developments, it has to be flood proofed. I believe there's a study that has to be done that looks at the flood levels. So there is regulation currently in there for people, if they are within a moderate risk floodplain, that they can.
Use to mitigate?
Yeah, but
Okay,
there
no,
is just
I just wanted to make
specific
sure that
regulation
there
what that
was
looks like.
some recourse, because I'm, for this one, it's pretty straightforward, but going forward, any other areas that might have moderate floodplaining, I don't want people to think that their land is worthless, that there is things you can do to be able to reclaim and reuse that land. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Nobody left to speak, so we'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed 12-1 with public member voting nay. Thank you, Leanne. Just want to notify committee that Councilor Tingley and the CAO will be leaving around 10 o'clock for a previous engagement. Next item on the agenda is Plan 25-001, Riverstone 214 Limited, amendments to MPS and to the existing DA. And Rachel, you can begin when you're ready.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm having some technical difficulties here. My computer's not connecting. Pardon me. Yes, through Mr. Chair, Amanda's going to show the presentation, and I will just run through that.
That's okay. Go.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is an application by Riverstone 214 Limited. The land the application relates to has been zoned commercial use for several years. Amendments were made to the regional commercial zone in 2016 in the official community plan amendments to enable mixed-use developments on the 9 Mile River side of Highway 214. And in 2020, council approved a mixed-use development on the property. The decision was appealed by local residents to the Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board, but the appeal was not successful, and the development agreement was signed and entered into in 2021, and the developer purchased the property with the approved development agreement in place. So the approved development agreement requires, a couple of the elements that it requires are that at least 50% of the total ground floor area of all buildings be commercial, and at no point shall the total residential ground floor area surpass the combined commercial ground floor area for all buildings, and that the single-story building is commercial, and this means that the single-story commercial building is commercial and the ground floor of the 4-story building is commercial, and both of these have to be constructed prior to the 6-story building so that you don't exceed that 50% required floor area. The single-story commercial building has been completed and is occupied by Nova Scotia Public Health, and the 4-story building is currently under construction. So in 2024, the developer submitted an application to amend the existing development agreements, and in support of that application, the developer indicated that despite active promotion for over a year, they hadn't found tenants due to the low demand for commercial floor area. So the application were 2 elements to the application, and it was to relocate the commercial activities to the 6-story building, which is located to the rear of the 4-story building, and also to allow for short-term rentals to be considered a commercial use, so that would enable them to go into that commercial floor area. Council refused that application in June 2024. So this is just some images from the property, and we have the single-story commercial building you can see down there on the bottom left. That's the Nova Scotia Public Health building, and you can see the photographs showing the construction of the 4-story building. So these images just show the permitted elevations for both the 4-story and the 6-story building, and then the site plan, which is approved. The 4-story building is on the top left of your image here, and you can see that the 6-story is to the rear, and the single-story is also fronting on Highway 214, and that's at the bottom left-hand side. The zone is regional commercial, and it originally included the whole of the property, so that this has been since subdivided to create 3 separate properties. The subject property is for the 4-story building, and it's outlined in yellow on the zoning map. And all around the site, there is regional commercial zone land. The 9 Mile River is located to the rear. And you can see there's a little bit of floodplain zoning. That's the blue color. That's actually over the bank down to the 9 Mile River. And then some aerial photographs just showing the property. So the applicant has requested substantial amendments to the municipal plan and strategy and amendments to the development agreements. So the developer is requesting that the development agreement amendments that would enable the rear of the first-story building, the floor-story building, the ground floor be used for residential, and that would mean that the front of the building would be used for commercial. And to enable this to happen, the policies in the municipal plan and strategy would need to be amended, and then there would also be amendments to the development agreements. And on the image, there is a floor plan showing the proposed floor plan for the development, and you can see the commercial area is outlined by to the bottom of the image, and that's the area that will front onto Highway 214, and the residential units to the rear. And the applicant has indicated there the proposed ground floor square footage. So the application differs from the application that council considered in 2024 in that this application now is proposing to retain some commercial floor area on the ground floor. And it also includes a request to amend the policies of the municipal plan and strategy, which will enable the amendments to the development agreement. The application that you considered in 2024 was actually just an amendment to the development agreements. And amendments to policy ED 34 is the one that needs to be changed. So staff will also review if other amendments to other policies are required. And if amendments permitted to policies, again, just a note there that the development agreement will also need to be changed. So this is the main policy that will need to be amended. And you can see here, E, we have the proposed commercial ground floor must equal or surpass the residential ground floor area. At this point, planning staff have not formed an opinion regarding the proposal. If council gives approval to schedule a public information meeting for this application, planning staff will begin processing the application, and that this will include, but is not limited to, holding a public information meeting, reviewing relevant policies in the municipal planning strategy. We'll do a jurisdictional scan of other municipalities' policies for zones similar to the regional commercial zone, and we'll consult with the municipal economic and business development team. So in addition to the requested changes to the MPS policies, because this requires an amendment to the development agreement, questionnaires will need to be sent to property owners within 300 metres of the application site, and comments will also be sought from other stakeholders, so Nova Scotia Public Works, for example. The applicant has offered comments in support of the application, and a copy of the application letter has been attached to the staff report. Just another note there, just to say that questionnaires will also be mailed out to property owners within 300 metres. And to conclude, staff are requesting approval for a public information meeting, and this will enable staff to begin processing the application. The graphic here shows the process to amend the municipal plan and strategy. Amendments to the development agreement can be processed concurrently, but the amendments to the development agreement is contingent on those amendments to the municipal plan and strategy. There is no appeal, right of appeal for amendments to the municipal plan and strategy. And if approved by council, amendments to those policies will have to be reviewed by the Nova Scotia government. The alternative is that if a planning advisory committee may recommend refusal of the application, but the recommendation is that Planning Advisory Committee recommend that Council authorise staff to schedule a public information meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Rachel. Warden Rolston.
Thank you. Well, this developer is persistent. I will give them that. I am thinking back to when the initial development agreement by the original developer was passed, and there was a lot of discussion at that time. And council worked with that developer that all three of these buildings are the same development agreement. So it was kind of a work within to make it meet the policy and work, and that was to allow the commercial to be on the ground floor of only two of the buildings and allow the standalone commercial building to count towards the ground floor commercial to meet the requirements that were there, which meant that the apartment building that will be built in back would not be required to have any commercial on the ground floor. I thought that was a fair way of doing it. I really have not changed my opinion on that. The commercial that's already completed is rented and occupied. And if we change our documents, our planning strategy, it's not just changed for this property. It's changed for, and I know it might just be the regional commercial zone in the Elmsdale area and not others. That gets confusing. But if I were convinced that there was a flaw in the regulation around the regional commercial strategy or regulations as they stand, and that we should fix it for everyone, then I'd certainly be looking more favorably at this. But to change the regulation for the entire zone to meet the needs of one development without knowing, and it is a regional commercial zone. It's a commercial zone that residential is allowed in by development agreement. And I guess I'm just concerned with continuing to try and lessen the possibility for commercial development in our regional commercial zone by trying to make ways for people to put more residential there. There are lots of places that people can construct residential development. But we chose that this was a regional commercial zone. And if we still feel that that's a good place for a regional commercial zone, then for me, that's where, if we don't, then we should be looking at far more than these tweaks here. So I guess at this point in time, I'm not in favor of changing our planning strategy, which would affect every property within this zone. And we really haven't done any research to see what that might mean yet. But I do think it could probably mean a reduction in the amount of commercial development we're going to get in it. So those are my concerns at this time, but I look forward to hearing what other councilors think. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Councilor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I'm a kind of person that like to make it, like, help people instead of blocking them, so I'm gonna say my point anyway. So my question is, with what he requests in the 4-story building, that will keep him in line with more than half of the 2 buildings is commercial, right? Not the 3. Because I know the developer have come before to move the commercial to the back of the 6-story building. for some financial reason, because like CMHC will give you only 85% on residential. They don't cover commercial. So that was one of the points he raised about the financial issue. So if we let him go with what he's requesting now, can we enforce him to put the remainder of the 50% commercial on the back of the building, on the 6-story building? Instead of going through the rezoning or changing the MPS and
Through you, Mr. Chair, so that would be similar to the development agreement that was already considered back in 2024, where the developer wanted to move commercial to the 6-story building. So, I mean, it would be the same discussion at that point.
actually, I don't see it the same, because with the 4-story building now being occupied and finished, and he doesn't have enough, over 50% of the total area of commercial, probably. So if now he have, between the two buildings, he have enough to cover the 50% of the two buildings, and when he construct the back building, if he can put the remainder of the 50% of commercial on the back building, I think that would help him financially if we can, obviously, if we can enforce it. Like, I don't know how we can enforce that, if it's enforceable or not.
So a couple of points there. So through you, Mr. Chair. So it's possible to amend the development agreement so that it requires the commercial area that you're missing from the 4-story building in the 6-story building. But as at the point that this application was discussed in 2024, staff had concerns regarding that because the commercial being on Highway 214 was an important consideration. So having that commercial or some of that floor area of commercial in the 6-story building behind, that was main concerns with regards to the original application. So I guess I just want to remind PAC that was the concerns at that point in time. But it is possible to amend the development agreement. You would have to pull that 6-story building into the application and just look at the 4-story building and the 6-story building. So although where that commercial floor area sits, whether you have part of it in the 4-story and part of it in the 6-story, it's still the same discussion as in 2024 in that you're moving around the floor area of the commercial use. And the developer at that point in time, although that was their application, they had indicated that their preference was just to have that 6-story building as just residential, even though that's what their original application had said. So all that said, you could amend the development agreement to allow that to happen, but staff would have concerns about putting commercial in that 6-story building, so because it doesn't front onto Highway 214.
Yeah, but the difference between the 24 and now is that the front building, it's all commercial at the front. So all the commercial you have on Highway 14, you have commercial on 2 buildings, right? Before it was all residential, then all the commercial in the back. So that make big difference to me to look at it if you have the front of the building is totally commercial, and probably in the back you could put a couple offices, like maybe you never know if somebody want to have an office in a residential building, like lawyer or something like that. So I don't know. That was something I thought about if council could look at or staff could go to the developer with something like that. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just before we move on from that point, we could certainly have that discussion with the developer and see if there was interest in having that change to the application, if that was what council decided they wanted us to do with the application.
Yeah, because to me, not all commercial have to be a restaurant or something. It could be an office, a lawyer's office, or a dentist, or something like that, like in the back, where they don't need to be in the front. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Deputy Warden McPhee.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to move that the Planning Advisory Committee recommends to Council that Council refuse the application by Riverstone 214 Limited to amend the municipal planning strategy and to amend the existing development agreement.
Seconded.
It's moved in second. Thank you, Deputy Warden. Counselor Rhino.
Thank you. I'm going to support the motion, and I find myself totally in agreement with what the warden has spoke on previously. I do believe, and I just wanted to point out, you know, I think we've been more than favorable for this developer in regard to moving the ground floor development under one roof, so to speak. And I also, you know, want to point out that we often around this chambers have been saying we need more commercial, you know, compared to residential. So if we remove this, then to me, that's just going backwards against what we've always said before. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Nobody else wishing to speak, so we'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed 10-2. With myself and Councilor Musa voting nay. Thank you. So, I guess we don't. Thank you, Rachel. Next item on the agenda is Planning 24-014, Kel Gregg rezoning application. And John, you can begin when you're ready.
I don't know, maybe we'll just have to get Shirley to put it on the screen. Okay. Oh, Shirley's not here. Sorry, Amanda. Yeah.
Sister.
Okay. So the background, the municipality is reviewing an application from Kel Gregg to redesignate and rezone a property in Belnan from rural use to country residential, and with a corresponding change in designation as well. And then on slide 2, you can see the subject property. There are actually 2 separate properties, together 97 hectares or 240 acres that are currently wooded and undeveloped. And neither property is located within a growth management area or growth reserve area. And as you can see from the zoning there, adjacent properties to the west are agricultural reserve, and to the north and east, rural use, and then to the south, the existing Meadowview subdivision, country residential. So the proposal is to extend the country residential zoning to the end of their property to permit the continued development of Garden Meadow subdivision. And as you can see from the plan below, that red line that runs down the middle is basically the current zoning boundary, so the country residential runs up to that. So if they want to continue development, they would have to get that rezoning. And based on this plan, the applicant is suggesting that there would be an additional 114 lots developed. And on the next slide, yeah, as part of the review process, staff will be requesting comments from our usual reviewing agencies. And although the rural use zone that there right now does permit single unit dwellings, which is what the subdivision is composed of, it doesn't permit new roads. So that's why the rezoning and redesignation is required. And one of the key things that'll happen as a result of that requirement is a hydrogeological study. So the applicant is now aware they have to do one to make sure those additional 114 dwelling units will have water. In terms of engagement, an application will be put in an upcoming edition of the Herald, and a public information meeting is required because it is an amendment to the MPS. A letter would be mailed to all property owners within 300 meters, giving the date, time, and location of the public information meeting. And again, a notice in the Herald about the PIM. And after a public information meeting is held, a letter and questionnaire would then be mailed to all property owners within that same 300 meters, providing residents another opportunity to express their thoughts. So the next slide just shows the process, and here we are at the initial report. And obviously staff, as we always do, will make a recommendation in our final staff report, and council's decision would not be appealable, as again, it involves not just a rezoning, but an amendment to your municipal planning strategy as well. So the recommendation is that PAC recommend that council authorize staff to schedule a public information meeting, and there's a motion to that effect. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, John. First up to speak. Warden Rolston.
I guess what I'm getting from this is the main reason that they're requiring a zone change is our regulation that they cannot construct any new roads in the rural use zone. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And as everyone here knows, it's been here at all, I was never enthusiastic about that restriction in the rural use zone. And we did remove that restriction in some parts of the municipality as to whether or not new roads could be constructed. I continue to believe, as I have in the past, that restricting the constructions of new roads in the rural use zone in the Dunmore River area there just shuts down development and forces folks to find other ways to develop the land. So by changing it to country residential, and I'm going to support the request, the roads are still going to be built. So I guess once we're finished dealing with this one, I'm probably going to move a motion to add review of the regulation around new roads in the rural use zone to the upcoming plan review next year for further discussion to see if we still are leaning in that direction. But at this point in time, for expediency, for this subdivision to be expanded, this is pretty well the only option that there is. So I move that Planning Advisory Committee recommends the council authorize staff to schedule a public information meeting to consider a proposal for PIDs 4508611 and 4508697 to change from the rural use RU zone designation to country residential CR zone designation.
Thank you, Warden. It's moved to second. Deputy Warden McPhee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I was going to make the recommended motion, so I'll just ask my one question. Part of the access is going to be through Meadowview Way, which is gravel, or a section of it is gravel, the old original section. Is there any way that we can get that upgraded for those residents? It's going to be a lot more traffic, a lot more maintenance. Be nice to have it paved.
Through Mr. Chair, not as a result of this application. There's always the local improvement process, so and that can happen by way of a petition from residents, or if council just decides to go ahead and do one, they could do that through motion as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Councilor Hibb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, the hydrological study for water, that's quite an area, would they do that in separate areas or just one spot, or just how do they do that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, not quite sure. It's up to the professional that does it. So we just, at our end, we basically make sure that they've got a qualified hydrogeologist that does the work. And what we asked for initially is a level 1. So I'm not sure they actually drill anything out there. They just look at current well records and the geology and so on. And I think only if they find there could be an issue would they actually move to or recommend to move to a level 2, where you would actually go start drilling wells on the property.
Okay. My only concern is, I know, having campaigned through there in the last election, there's a number of people that's having problems with water. They just don't have it. I know one lot has a drilled well and has a dug well, and they still don't have enough water. They gotta get water hauled in. So, to me, this is something that, you're no good to putting buildings in there if they don't have water. So I think we should keep a close eye on that. So, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Counselor. Nobody left to speak. We'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously. Thank you, John.
We're gonna break it. Oops.
We could take it early, right? We're scheduled for a break at 10:35, and just in case the next one goes over, we'll take a break now and come back in at 10:40.